Yes, us. So, since the first panel after lunch is a little bit, needs some action, so the first, we start with the video. Can you mute it? Yeah. Yeah, thanks. So this, if you can see at the corner of the screen, there's a ship approaching the berth. That the ship is 11,400 TEU, 343 meter container ship. The CMA CGM Centaurus approaching the port of Jebel. And you can see all the stevedots are getting ready for cargo operations. And you can see in a moment now the ship crashing into the gantry crane. And it crashes onto the port terminal building. So I think we can all agree that everyone sitting in this room, that in the shipping industry, safe navigation is our priority, all of us, whether we are navigators, engineers, P&I, hull, or ship management companies, or trainers. Navigation is the priority. And you just saw one video, but statistics show that such an incident occurs every week, somewhere around the world. And this has been happening for the last 10 years. And as you can see, the average value per incident is upwards of $1 million. 75% navigation error, and over 60% of them happen with a pilot on board. Okay, so that's the topic of today's presentation. Issues, and as Apostolos mentioned earlier this morning, human error is a myth. There is a larger system issue that needs to be addressed. So first we are going to attack that, identify the problem, and also, as Apostolos mentioned, we don't share the good stuff enough. So, good news, I will be sharing some good stuff. So this is a report from the Australian Marine Pilots Institute, which says that the number one cause is inadequate passage plan in port. And number two is an absence of a shared mental model. The points 1 and 2 lead to points 3 and 4. That is over-reliance on pilot. And then when something goes wrong, there is a lack of situational awareness. Now, in navigation in port, and most navigators in this room will agree, even 10 seconds of inattention, even if you miss by 10 seconds, it's game over. So the idea is to share with you how we can do it better. These are actual EGDIS screenshots. So the one on the left is a container ship which bangs into a berth, similar to the video that you saw at 5 knot speed. And the other one alters late with a following current and goes aground in a channel. So most of these incidents occur either due to high speed or late alteration. So navigators and naval architects will know that a ship, it doesn't have brakes, okay? And if you turn the ship, it takes a while before the ship actually turns. And if you stop the ship, it takes actually some time before the ship stops. And you will see this poster on the wheelhouse of most ships. But I'll be happy to be corrected if someone tells me, and I can tell you that no one implements these turning circle and the stopping distance into the passage plan. These two are seen as two different things. Okay, so the turning circle is supposed to be in the back of the mind, and what goes in the chart is totally different matter. And you will see on the chart, even today, even on, like Apostolos you mentioned, LNG ships, top of the class, even today, I have a friend who's a LNG master sailing on Q-Flex ships. So even today he says you have the second mates plotting 6.5 knots next to the berth, or you have various speeds. Now neither is 6.5 knots meaningful, neither is various speeds. So the IGP&I Club, they recommend that the Master Pilot Exchange needs to be a visual presentation. So that's the recommendation, and this is something which matches my own observations working with a large fleet after investigating several accidents. So what we are saying is that the Master Pilot Exchange, that paper that has been in use for so many years, is useless. You can just throw it out in the garbage bin. Also, there is a myth that half myth, that the pilot knows the port and the master knows the ship. Okay, and I'm saying this having been a master, that the master doesn't bring that knowledge to that bridge team. When the pilot is there, there is a competency gap between the pilot and the bridge team, and that includes the master. The pilot knows the port very well, and he also knows the kind of ship that he's going to pilot. Most pilots, they pilot these ships day in and day out, 3 times a day, 4 times a day. So if they know there's a Panamax coming in or a chemical tanker coming in, they know exactly what the length is, the breadth is, that one will have a bow thruster, one won't, and they know exactly how they will maneuver. So if you have one person, the pilot, who knows what is going to happen, and the rest of the bridge team who doesn't know what is going to happen, obviously there is going to be a failure at some point. Again, Apostolos, I'm referencing you often, so we tie in everything that's been said. 99.9% everything happens fine. We are talking about that 1% where things go wrong and how to improve it. All right. Most of the time the pilot is aware, he's in a good mood, he is attentive, and things go well. But there are times, and again, there might be a question about power, distance and all that, but I can tell you these accidents happen across the world with all nationalities. So let's just keep that on the side. You have an issue of competency distance. So what we are proposing, throw away the Master Pilot Exchange. This is the new Master Pilot Exchange that even the IGP&I Club and the Australian Marine Pilots Institute are suggesting. So this is essentially an A4 paper with a printout of the EGDIS, which shows the course and importantly the speeds of the ship, at which speed they have to be at which point in the maneuver. So you have these courses plotted on the EGDIS. The bridge team discusses it. It is not just the second mate marking some lines on the EGDIS anymore. The bridge team discusses it, and when the pilot comes on board, they discuss this with the pilot. Of course, if the pilot feels that because of the wind or current, you need to do things differently, the pilot informs the bridge team, so all of them are on the same page. All right, so same page, shared mental model. These are key. And then the last step is also very important. The last step is that the officer on watch, he keeps monitoring the maneuver. I have done navigation audits myself, and I know on the bridge, the pilot, he knows the most, the master knows a little bit what's happening, and the officer on watch, he's totally disconnected with what's happening. I have seen, the captain asking the officer, okay, what's the next course? And, he had already plotted the course for going out, and he gave the opposite course, all right? So that's how disconnected most of the officers are on watch. But then with this, they see which point they are in the maneuver, and they can alert one cable before the alteration, or if the ship has passed that alteration point, they can raise a flag and say, we have passed that alteration point where we needed to be below 3 knots. So you save those precious seconds in acting so the ship can maneuver safely into port. So then, of course, so you can see, if the advance and transfer is less, the advance and transfer is more than the available sea room, obviously you cannot turn using the rudder. The ship needs to be stopped where your pivot point comes to the center, and then you maneuver with the rudder and the thrusters. So that's how the ship's maneuvering characteristics are incorporated in the passage plan. Of course, you can do one step better. You can use this plan also for port approaches, where you incorporate the information from P&I clubs, from the sailing directions, and from other ships. Now, here's the beauty. In today's world, almost every ship, if you have a fleet of 20, 30 ships, for sure you'll have more or less the ships calling the same ports. And you can have a collective database of what's really happening. So this plan is not a theoretical plan. So you make a plan, when the ship goes to the port, they see what's the reality, they adjust the plan for themselves, and they share with the rest of the fleet. So you have an almost accurate plan, let's say in a year, from the time you start making this. And again, if you remember one of the ships, I said there's a late alteration. There was a P&I club alert saying, okay, in monsoon months in port in South America, you have strong currents, but nobody looks at those alerts because there is too much information, but there's not much actionable information at the time that you need it. So like I said, it's a shared vision of the maneuver. And again, ladies and gentlemen, this is not something new. This is not something fancy. What we have shared today is already required as per SOLAS Chapter 5. We are just doing it perfectly. We're just doing it in the best possible way. This is the best practice. And as I said, is a visual presentation as recommended by the P&I clubs. And it's already in use by several cruise ships, is in use in ports in Australia and New Zealand. It improves the spatial awareness and enables active intervention. Again, you can go one step better. Traditional master pilot exchange, not much information. But here, you can get pictures from Google Maps. You can get pictures from website. And as a navigator, I can tell you it really improves my spatial awareness. It improves my awareness of how the port is going to look like. Because in the ECDIS, I see only the berth, but you have a ship on either side, it reduces my sea room by 60 meters. But with this, I get a very good idea of where I'm going. So these points I've already discussed with you. You have the plan, discussed with the pilot, and the officer calls out if you've gone past the alteration point. So rather than being reactive, that is, if you're missing an alteration point and it's too late, and I have been there, I have been in situations where it was, we had to drop emergency anchor because we were going too fast. But if I had had this back in the day, probably we could have reduced the speed earlier. You also allow for failures, so you know exactly, okay, if you're going in, what's the depth, If you need to do an emergency anchoring, how many shackles you need to pay out. So this is all well discussed, instead of trying to manage the situation in the last minute, trying to figure out how many shackles you need to pay out if the engine or the rudder fails. Also in rivers, you can plan ahead. You will probably agree with me that meeting another ship at the bend of a river is not the best place. So you can meet in the widest part possible, and you can discuss this with the pilot. So see, it gives you talking points with the pilot. All right, when you have the map in front of you, it gives you something to concrete to discuss with the pilot and say, this is a plan, what do you think? If you need to make changes, you can go ahead and make it. And you can also plan berthing and unberthing maneuvers. And this is the future. The old master pilot exchange is going to become extinct soon. You'll need visual plans, so it's best if you get started early. You have a library of plans. I do. So it's good. And again, I've been using it for the last 10 years, and I can assure you the number of navigation incidents in our fleet over the last 10 years has reduced significantly since we started using this method for maneuvering in port. Thank you very much.